Rowena Explorez presents Night Ghost Stories. At Barrow's intense tasting room, Industry City in Brooklyn, New York, we gathered by the crackling fire as Sasha Graham, a renowned tarot expert and writer, gave us the opportunity to share our ghost stories, psychic happenings, paranormal occurrences, and even stories of UFO sightings. This ghost story was told by Andrea Janes, a ghost storyteller. So sit back, grab a blanket, and get ready to be spooked.
Okay, so Andrea Janes. What a great name is that, Andrea Janes. It sounds like, I don't know, a soap opera character, a gothic novel, protagonist. She tells ghost stories for a living. She is the co-author of A Haunted History of Invisible Women, which is being released this September, and it sounds like an absolutely fabulous book. Actually, and it's available for pre-order right now at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Bookshop. But Andrea is not just an author, oh no. She is the owner and founder of Barrows of the Dead, a boutique tour company dedicated to dark and unusual walking tours around New York City. I happened to go on Witches of New York, which took place down on the Lower East Side, down at the 5 Points. We literally went from neighborhood to neighborhood, finding out all about witches and fortune tellers and clairvoyants that were around in the mid-19th century. It was absolutely phenomenal. So this is an extraordinary company. She lives in Brooklyn, where she can usually be found by the ocean or near a cemetery. So ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce you to your closing storyteller, Miss Andrea Janes.
The really great thing about doing what I do is getting to hear other people's stories. Yeah, we tell stories on our tours for sure. I see some of my customers over here who have come back again and again. That's awesome. But the absolute best and favorite part of my job is hearing customers come up to me as we're strolling between stops on the tour, and they're like, "Come here, I want to tell you something that happened to me." And that's been really fun tonight, because I kind of feel like I'm experiencing that all over again. Everywhere I go, once people find out who I am and what I do, that's what they want to do, is tell me their ghost stories. Alejandro, you were the first to speak. Did you say you're from Colombia?
Yes, I am.
So I'm an immigrant. When I immigrated from an exotic nation called Canada, I had my interview with the officer at the USCIS, and he was like, "Oh, hey, what Barrows of the Dead, what's that?" And he's like, "I'm from Colombia, and let me tell you a ghost story." So I'm sitting there in my citizenship interview, and this guy's like, "Growing up in my small town where I grew up, we had a guy who was a medical medium, and he could just read you, and he could diagnose you, and he would recommend things. He would diagnose you, he would write prescriptions, and he just got all of his information from the spirits, and it was amazing." And then after 15 minutes of hearing this incredible tale, he was like, "Oh yeah, welcome to America, you've passed." So it was really cool, and I loved that. Joe, I loved the literary flourish on the end of your story as you were gaining that little hand came closer. That's great, I might steal that. I love that you're from Coney Island, my spiritual home. I just hopped on the D train and I'm there. It's so good to be with you all. I've had customers come up to me and tell me stuff like, growing up in St. Louis, we lived in an old house, and in the basement there was this whole secret room behind the drywall, and when we knocked down the drywall, we found an octagonal room painted blue covered with mirrors, and in the center of the room was just a Rolodex, and on each card the words blonde, blue were written over and over again thousands of times. This is the kind of stuff people tell me. One woman told me, "I am haunted by the ghost of my former lover who killed himself on my bed with my gun." These are the things people tell me. But the best story I was ever told is from a woman who lived on the Upper East Side. And I'm going to keep her name private. I'm just going to call her JM. JM. She lived on the Upper East Side, and she told me a story. A bit of a trigger warning here. Her husband passed away, also by his own hand. Seems I attract that kind of woman on my tour. And she was like, I had recently been widowed. My husband had just committed suicide. I was bereft. I was distraught. I was on my own for the first time. And I decided I was going to do the, one thing I wanted to do my whole life that I never did. I was going to buy myself an apartment. I was going to buy myself a home. I was alone, but I was going to have a home. And me and the dog were going to have a home. And she poured everything she had into buying a condominium. And it was cheap, really cheap. Suspiciously cheap for the Upper East Side. But she bought it, she fixed it up, she renovated it. It took months and months and months. And like every cent she had was in this place. And it was such an intense renovation, like a studs down renovation, like she didn't even live in the place for the first couple of months that she owned it. She spent a lot of time at her home. She's from Long Island, and she spent a lot of time home, and she would drive back and forth to check on the place. And it was just about the end of the summers, Labor Day weekend. She was driving in, she was stuck in traffic, she was checking on the place, she was in the car with the dog under her arm. She finally gets to her apartment, her new apartment, her home that she longed for so long. She gets up in there and she is shocked to discover that although all of the beautiful renovations have been executed to her precise specifications, the walls of her freshly painted home have been scrawled with mysterious graffiti that she can only describe as obscene. Obscene, pornographic, disgusting. She can't go into any further detail about it, but she's shocked. She's like, what, did the workman do this? What is going on? Meanwhile, she's looking at this, aghast, and her dog has wriggled out from under her arm, run out the door, it's sat in the hallway, and refuses to cross the threshold, won't go into this apartment, so I'm not going in. And she's like, okay, this is weird. She goes downstairs, and she's talking to the doorman of the building, and she's like, this is really strange, my dog hates this apartment, he won't go in, there's some writing on the walls, it's very upsetting, I don't know what is happening. And the guy just says, oh, Mrs. Spencer is back. Mrs. Spencer is back. Turns out, apparently, there was a woman named Julia Spencer who lived in that house before her with a really, apparently fairly famous and wealthy family. She's got a pretty good pedigree. She apparently was the niece of J.P. Morgan. Back before the building became condominiums, it was a single family home, it was a mansion, and it was this fine lady's home. So suddenly, this woman's got to contend with the fact that her dream home that she's sunk every cent she has into is haunted by Mrs. Spencer. But she's like, look, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to do something about this. And she brings, and this is her terminology, she brings a voodoo priestess from New Orleans. She flies her up from New Orleans. And she has her come in, and she has her cleanse the house. And they do a ritual, and she's like, it was like something out of a bad horror movie. It was really cheesy, it was really over the top, and I'm like, this is not gonna work, this is insane. And yet, lo and behold, by the time they're done, it's about 2:30 in the morning, she feels a strange sort of peace settle over her. And she feels calm, and she's like, I feel as though this is actually effective. And they do this very weird thing. They go around knocking on the doors of every other apartment in the building. It's 2:30 in the morning. And they're like, listen, we just had this cleansing ceremony and we're here and we would like to offer you a chance to have it done in your apartment as well. And not one single person slammed the door in their face, which is astonishing because I'm pretty sure I would have. Anyway, so she's feeling good, she's feeling confident, she's like, I'm gonna move in, this is done, it's finished, close the book on Mrs. Spencer, goodbye. She moves in. But fairly soon after she moves in, some strange disturbances start to happen in her apartment again. And she's like, I don't feel like I'm alone. I feel like there's a presence here with me. She's later cleaning out her storage unit in the basement and she finds an old oil painting buried beneath layers and layers and layers of years and years and years of junk and detritus like you find in the basement. She's like, this is an oil painting of, I'm pretty sure this is Mrs. Spencer. So she consults her friend from New Orleans again. She says, what should I do? And she is told that she should put this oil painting in the lobby, which she does. She's already on the board at this point. She's on the condo board. She's like, we're gonna put this painting in the lobby, we're gonna do it. And her friend from New Orleans says, you should always have fresh flowers by the painting and in your apartment at all times. So she has fresh flowers by the painting, she has fresh flowers in her apartment at all times. And she says that eventually the disturbances became more and more innocuous, more and more gentle. And as time passed, and as the fresh flowers were maintained, and as the portrait had its private place in the lobby, eventually, when the spirit would wake her up at 3 in the morning, which it did with regularity, it would just wake her and speak to her, just be a presence next to her bed. It became a sort of benevolent, comforting presence, and somehow made her feel less lonely in her widowhood. And she formed a sort of bond with Mrs. Spencer. It was a kind of beautiful story, and in the end, even the dog learned to put up with her. So, it was pretty sweet. That woman, by the way, is Joan Rivers. Yeah, FYI, R.I.P. So, thank you guys.
Was that a spooky ghost story Andrea Janes told? Anyway, thank you guys for watching my channel. Please remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell as to get notified whenever I upload new videos. Once again, thank you so much. Your support is greatly appreciated. And remember to share, give a thumbs up, and all that good stuff. Thank you so much. Once again, this is Rowena Explorez with a Z or Z signing off.
Thank you so much for your story. Have a great night.